Dan Morehead is one of the most famous people in the crypto world. He's the CEO of the hedge fund Pantera Capital and one of the biggest crypto analysts. He recently gave a great interview to CNBC in which he explained how and why his company made $171 million on the fall of stablecoins. And today, we'll talk about how his company managed to predict the fall of Terra, what Dan Morehead thinks about the crypto market, why Bitcoin fell, and what crypto's growth prospects are. Dan Morehead is a famous crypto optimist. He believes that the current decline in Bitcoin and crypto in general is primarily due to the high correlation between the crypto market and other assets. There are some asset classes, such as cryptocurrencies, that should not be correlated with traditional markets. So far, the correlation of cryptocurrencies with risky assets like stocks is quite high, but I can easily imagine that within a year, stocks and bonds will fall, real estate will fall, but cryptocurrency will grow a lot and will trade by its own rules. Everything is moving in that direction. In other words, Dan Morehead believes that in the medium term, the cryptocurrency will decouple from other markets and, unlike them, will begin to grow steadily. In addition, Morehead noted that from a fundamental point of view, cryptocurrencies continue to look attractive to investors. He emphasized that there was a significant growth in crypto market, and now there is an equally significant decline. But there have been 5 such cycles, and Pantera Capital has been investing in digital assets for a decade. Morehead says it's too early to say that the crypto industry has hit rock bottom. Another reason that may affect Pantera Capital's change in investment preferences is the straightening market correlation between Bitcoins and securities. Yes, Morehead says this correlation will fade, but right now, in his view, the US Federal Reserve's position and key interest rate changes may have been the trigger for the cryptocurrency industry crisis, and in this context, Bitcoin is convincingly showing its connection to company stocks. Earlier, the CEO of Pantera Capital said that now it makes sense to consider buying some altcoins, though he did not specify which ones. That's exactly what Pantera Capital did in early 2022, when the stablecoins collapsed. I actually just saw the peg break a few cents and match it against historical currency pegs, said co-founder Joey Kroc. And although many didn't believe in the possibility of the collapse of UST, it still happened. But by then, Pantera Capital had about 5% of the original USTs left. Thanks to clever risk hedging and the timely sale of most of Terra's assets, Pantera Capital ended up with 100-fold net profit. But despite the good profits, Dan Morehead remains very moderate in its forecasts. The fall of Terra is a vivid illustration of the instability of the industry and its economic system. Even companies that actively hedge their corporate risks are not immune to instability. For example, Celsius or Three Arrows Capital are having difficulties and cannot repay their debts. There will likely be a couple more such bankruptcies in the next month or two, with each bankrupt debtor firm creating big problems for its creditors. Among other things, Dan Morehead is confident in the active growth of cryptocurrencies in the long term. Bitcoin price growth will be constant over the next 10 years. This in particular will be facilitated by a more active adoption of cryptocurrencies. Morehead noted that within the next 5 to 10 years, every smartphone owner will use cryptocurrency to pay for goods, services, or trade digital assets. The global promotion of Bitcoin will make it even more attractive to institutional investors. In addition to Bitcoin, many altcoins will also benefit, especially those with their own blockchain, Solana, Ethereum. They could go up in price by 90 to 100 times. You can find a more detailed video about the prospects of cryptocurrencies on our channel. However, despite this, Bitcoin's position is currently significantly affected by the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Many Bitcoin miners are forced to shut down their installations due to sanctions or rising energy costs. This led to a decrease in the complexity of BTC mining. The rate has been 10 times lower since July 2021. The hashing rate decreased by 1.5 at the beginning of March, and by summer, the drop was more than 4%. Looking at the current situation with crisis of crypto markets, we can hardly believe that Bitcoin will be worth $60,000 again. However, very many people are still sure that the future of crypto. We also believe that the market will recover sooner or later, but we're not going to recommend you anything. You are smart ones, so you can make your own conclusions. Thanks for watching. Check other videos on our channel. Like, comment, subscribe. See you soon.